Hey guys. In the last video, somebody asked if I was being paid to promote Adidas, seeing as the blue top appeared in more than one of my videos, but here's a partial explanation. The reason I'm wearing an Adidas top is basically down to the region's geopolitical history. So during the Cold War, Latin America was used as a proxy for the ideological fight between the USA and the forces of capitalism on one side and the Soviet Union and the forces of communism on the other.
Is the Premier threatening to explode this if our planes carry out their attack?
No, sir. It is not a thing a sane man would do. The doomsday machine is designed to trigger itself automatically.
But surely you can disarm it somehow?
No, it is designed to explode if any attempt is ever made to untrigger it.
The doomsday machine is terrifying? It's simple to understand.
Gee, I wish we had one of them doomsday machines.
Both sides were trying to install governments that were sympathetic to their cause and to destabilize any governments that were to the contrary. From the USA, due to what was known as the Truman Doctrine, the CIA were involved in regime change in a number of countries, and the USSR blithely threw guns into the hands of militia, who then went on, of course, to kidnap, rape, and murder. And as is typical, whenever communists get their hands on guns, the body count racked up. Sorry, I should make that clear. A trail of death is only what has happened every time in history so far that communists have got their hands on guns. I'm sure that none of that was actually real communism anyway. And if they could only have one more chance, this time it would work out okay. The communist body count so far is something like this. North Korea, 2.1 million, Cambodia 1.7 million, Ethiopia 1.5 million, Vietnam 1.2 million, Afghanistan 1 million, Romania 150,000, East Germany 90,000, and Bulgaria was only 50,000 dead. But then, of course, we didn't actually include Soviet Russia itself, which was around 20 million people, and we didn't include China, which conservative estimates for the Great Leap Forward are about 80 million. If you'd like further reading, do look up the Holodomor, Khmer Rouge, K-Shibir, and of course, the Great Leap Forwards. If you have a personal favourite mass killing from a communist regime and you think I've missed it out, please do let me know in the comments. Now, all of the above figures are only for internal repression, not external wars. So by comparison, if you want to compare this to the fascist regime in the USA, it would mean the government would have to have killed 30 million of its own citizens. USA police, as deadly as they are, only manage to kill about 1,000 people every year. So unfortunately, they're not still in the major leagues of internal political repression, with or without President Trump. Anyway, I digress. So what does this have to do with my blue Adidas top? Well, the net result of all the proxy conflicts in Latin America, aside from the violence, was the development of politically oriented leadership, rather than, say, people-oriented or business-oriented leadership. A complete lack of stable democratic institutions meant a much more immature political process, provided space for politicians to be able to prioritize very short-term gains over long-term development, much like happens in other countries, but more extensively and with worse consequences. And one of the consequences of this was that in 1991, as the Cold War was ending, several of the governments got together to try and stabilize the region and establish something called Mercosur. Mercosur is basically the Latin American equivalent of the EU. One of its goals is to tax products coming from outside of Mercosur highly, so that local companies don't feel the need to compete with large international companies. And this sounds great for local businesses, but it's not. What it means is that local people have to pay much higher prices for lower quality goods. This also raises taxes for politicians to feed their own agendas, whilst inhibiting economic growth in the region. As an example, a MacBook Pro, which would cost about £1,450 in the UK, costs £2,700 in Brazil, just under twice the price. Phones and other bits of technology are also much more expensive because of high tariffs on electrical components. This results in loads of Brazilians walking around with broken phone screens because they can't always afford to fix them when they break. And then with clothing, if you go to any Brazilian clothing store, you're going to see tags that say Feito no Brasil or Made in Brazil, which of course they have to be to avoid the taxes on import. And the reason you don't see many clothes saying Feito no Brasil in your local clothing store in the UK is because they are typically of much lower quality than the clothes that we source from the Far East. Zara Brazil imports its clothes from Turkey, for example, and in Zara Brazil, the prices are typically double what you would expect to pay in the UK. Obviously, this protectionism is good for Brazilian clothes and electronics manufacturers, but it's really bad for the average Brazilian person as it increases their cost of living, it decreases their disposable income, and it contributes to national poverty by stopping them from buying competitive products from other countries. But in Adidas, however, they discount their clothing in Brazil so that the Brazilian price is the same as the UK price. And so, having come here with just 2 backpacks and relatively few clothes, we realized that if we needed more, Adidas was one of the few shops that balanced quality with reasonable prices. And that's why I wore the blue t-shirt twice. Plus, it looks good.